All right, so get this. Elon Musk is giving away $1 million. But there's a catch.
Yes.
You have to register to vote in Pennsylvania
Yeah.
and sign a petition supporting Donald Trump.
Mm.
Is that even legal? We're going to deep dive into this whole controversy.
Yeah.
And explore what it could mean for the upcoming election.
Yeah, it's a fascinating situation, isn't it? You have this intersection of, immense wealth, political influence, and campaign finance law, all kind of colliding in a way we don't often see.
Exactly. And we're not just speculating here. We've got some hard-hitting sources to dig into. We've got an article by Gaby Del Valle from The Verge and a tweet directly from America PAC, the political action committee founded by Musk. So let's unpack this thing first. Let's set the stage.
Yeah.
The 2020 election
Right.
was incredibly close.
Oh, yeah.
And Pennsylvania played a crucial role
Yeah.
in determining the outcome. So imagine the impact if even a few thousand voters were swayed by
Right.
$1 million incentive. This deep dive goes beyond just Elon Musk. It examines how money and power intertwine at the very core of our democratic process.
It's about the system.
Okay, so let's break down exactly what this America Paper petition entails.
Okay. On the surface, it seems pretty straightforward. The petition voices support for the First and Second Amendments, which are often central to conservative platforms. But here's the catch. You must be a registered voter in Pennsylvania to sign it.
Yeah.
And by signing, you are automatically entered into $1 million sweepstakes.
So you're saying he's essentially requiring people to be registered voters in a specific state to participate in a contest that could potentially win them a life-changing sum of money.
Yeah.
And this is all happening within the context of a heated presidential election where he is openly supporting a specific candidate.
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty big deal.
It is. It is, and it raises some serious legal questions. There's a federal law, specifically 52 U.S.C. 10307C, that prohibits paying or offering to pay someone to register to vote or vote in a federal election. Now, to be clear, the DOJ, which stands for Department of Justice, and the FEC, which is the Federal Election Commission, are the entities responsible for enforcing these types of laws.
Okay, so that seems pretty straightforward. Offering $1 million to someone. Who signs a petition linked to voter registration? Sounds like it could fall under that law. Wouldn't you agree?
I would, and several legal experts share that opinion. The Verge article we're looking at quotes Michael Kang, a professor of campaign finance law at Northwestern University. He states that the scheme, quote, violates the federal statute against paying someone to register to vote.
Wow.
Even with the petition acting as an intermediary step, Professor Kang argues that making voter registration a prerequisite for entering the sweepstakes essentially equates to payment for registration. And let's not forget the context. This isn't some random contest. It's directly tied to a presidential election.
Right. Now, I did see that America PAC has tried to reframe these payments as spokesperson fees. Is there any validity to that?
Well, let's look at the facts. The fine print of the sweepstakes still requires participants to sign that pro-Trump petition and be registered to vote in Pennsylvania. It seems like a thin veil to disguise the true nature of the arrangement. And campaign finance experts are skeptical, to say the least. Craig Holman, a lobbyist with Public Citizen, was also quoted in the Verge article, and he doesn't mince words. He calls the petition an illegal payment to encourage voter registration.
So if legal experts are raising red flags, what is the government doing about all of this? Have they taken any action?
Yes. There have been several responses. 11 former government officials from both Republican and Democrat administrations sent a letter to the DOJ urging them to investigate. That's a significant bipartisan group expressing concern.
That really speaks volumes about the potential seriousness of this situation, doesn't it? A bipartisan group of former officials calling for an investigation. What else has happened?
In addition to that letter, Public Citizen, a consumer advocacy group, filed a formal complaint with the Federal Election Commission. And CNN reported that the DOJ actually sent a warning letter directly to Musk about his actions.
So the government is definitely aware of what he's doing, but what are the chances that Musk will actually face consequences for this?
Well, that's where things get a bit more complex. Professor Kang, who we mentioned earlier, believes that jail time for Musk is unlikely, even if he were found guilty of violating campaign finance laws.
So you're saying there's a chance that a billionaire could potentially break a law designed to protect the integrity of our elections and just get a slap on the wrist?
It's possible. The DOJ tends to be cautious about taking aggressive action close to an election, as it could be perceived as an attempt to influence the outcome. A fine is more likely. But to someone with Musk's wealth, even a substantial fine could feel like a minor inconvenience. To put it in perspective, imagine if your biggest financial worry was whether to buy a coffee or a latte. That's kind of what a standard fine would feel like to Elon Musk.
That's a pretty sobering thought. It raises a crucial question. What is Musk's real objective here? Clearly, he's trying to help Trump get elected. But is there something more at play?
That's a question worth exploring. Public Citizen, in a separate report, highlighted that several of Musk's companies are currently under investigation by various government agencies, including the DOJ, the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, and even the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration.
So is it possible that this entire scheme is a calculated move to gain influence and leverage over these investigations?
It's certainly a possibility that warrants consideration. If Trump were to win the election, he would have the power to potentially intervene in these investigations, either by lessening their severity or even dismissing them altogether. Such a scenario could save Musk far more than the $1 million a day he's spending on this sweepstakes.
That's a disturbing thought, that someone could potentially use their wealth to circumvent legal processes and investigations. It makes you wonder if this entire situation is about more than just supporting a candidate. It might be about protecting personal interests.
It's a soup. It's a stark example of how money and power can become intertwined, and how they can potentially undermine the principles of fairness and accountability that our legal system is supposed to uphold.
This all sounds pretty bleak. What about the voters themselves? Are they being swayed by this $1 million carrot?
It's difficult to say for sure what impact, if any, this is having on voters. However, there was an interesting anecdote in the Philadelphia Inquirer. They reported that the first 3 winners of the sweepstakes were all registered Republicans who had already voted by mail before winning.
So it seems like this may not be about converting new voters to Trump's side, but perhaps about rewarding existing supporters.
It does raise the question of whether this is more about reinforcing pre-existing loyalties or swaying undecided voters, or perhaps it's a bit of both. It's definitely something to keep an eye on as we get closer to the election.
Okay, so let's recap for a moment. We have a billionaire potentially breaking the law to influence an election, with a seemingly low risk of facing any significant consequences. And all of this is happening in a state that could very well decide the presidency. This is pretty unsettling, wouldn't you say?
It's definitely a situation that raises concerns about the fairness and integrity of our elections. It begs the question, if someone with Musk's resources can potentially manipulate the system in this way, what does that say about the vulnerability of our democratic processes?
It feels like we're tiptoeing into some very ethically murky territory. At what point does a financial incentive cross the line and become undue influence in an election?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? And it's a question that lawmakers and ethicists are currently grappling with. We desperately need clearer guidelines and stronger enforcement mechanisms to safeguard the integrity of our elections.
Because if this is allowed to stand, it could open the floodgates for even more blatant attempts to buy elections in the future.
Exactly. We as citizens need to be incredibly vigilant and informed. As we head into this election, we need to understand the tactics being employed and the potential consequences they carry.
I think this entire Musk situation is a wake-up call for all of us. It reminds us that our democracy is not a guarantee. It's something we must actively protect and defend.
Absolutely. That starts with staying informed, asking critical questions, and holding those in power accountable for their actions.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what this all means for us as we approach November. What are the broader implications here?
When we consider the bigger picture, this situation raises some fundamental questions about the role of money in our elections and the influence that billionaires like Musk can wield. We already know that campaign finance is a complex and often contentious issue, but this takes it to a whole new level.
It almost feels like we're moving towards a system where elections could be swayed by the highest bidder, undermining the principle of one person, one vote.
That's a dangerous path to go down, and it's a path that erodes the very foundations of our democracy.
It really makes you stop and think about the potential consequences for our entire electoral system. If this kind of tactic becomes more widespread, it could seriously undermine public trust in the democratic process.
Absolutely. It's a crucial reminder that we can't simply be passive observers in our democracy. We have a responsibility to be informed, to critically evaluate information, and to engage in thoughtful discussions about these issues.
So what can we as individuals actually do to protect the integrity of our elections, especially in the face of these concerning trends?
Well, for starters, we need to educate ourselves. Don't just take headlines at face value. Dig deeper, research the issues, understand the nuances of campaign finance laws, and be aware of the tactics being used to influence voters.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's so easy to get caught up in the swirl of news and social media. But we need to take a step back and really think critically about the information we are consuming.
Exactly. Ask yourself, who's behind this message? What are their motives? What are the potential consequences? And don't be afraid to have those difficult conversations with friends, family, and colleagues. The more we talk about these issues, the more awareness we raise, and the better equipped we are to make informed decisions.
That's a powerful reminder that our individual actions and conversations can collectively contribute to a more informed and engaged electorate.
Yeah, and don't underestimate the power of your vote. Make sure you're registered, know the candidates and their positions, and show up at the polls. Every vote matters, especially in close elections.
So circling back to this Musk situation, what's the most important takeaway you would want our listeners to remember?
I think this entire scenario serves as a stark reminder that wealth can be a powerful tool, and it can be used in ways that potentially undermine the core principles of our democracy. It underscores the need for greater transparency, stricter regulations, and a more vigilant citizenry to safeguard the integrity of our elections.
Well said. So to wrap things up, we've delved into a complex and concerning situation. A billionaire potentially using his wealth to influence an election in a key state, with seemingly minimal risk of facing serious consequences.
Yeah, and it's a situation that raises a lot of questions about the power dynamics at play in our society, the role of money in our elections, and the importance of citizen engagement in protecting our democratic values.
It's a powerful reminder that we can't take our democracy for granted. We need to stay informed, stay engaged, and hold those in power accountable.
Exactly. And we need to be mindful of the potential for manipulation and undue influence, particularly as we head into this crucial election.
This Musk episode has definitely been a thought-provoking deep dive. What final thought would you leave our listener with?
I think just remember that you have a voice, and your vote matters. Do your research, ask critical questions, and engage in thoughtful conversations about the issues that shape our democracy. The future of our elections depends on an informed and engaged citizenry